And this is the Stella Culinary School podcast found online at stellaculinary.com. My name is Jacob Burton. Thank you once again for joining me. Coming at you live again from our friendly Facebook group. I get lots of questions. Hey, chef, when is the next live stream going to be? And that is 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, because I'm coming to you from the great west coast of the United States. Every single Friday. So if it is Friday and it is 7 a.m. on the Pacific Standard Time, well then, we are live with the greatest culinary podcast the world has ever known. And the response to the podcast has been really great lately. I've been having a lot of fun doing it. Comments have been strong. I think the live factor with the comments here in Facebook are going good, and Discord. So I thank everybody who is tuning in from all across the globe to help do this show live with me, because without you, I wouldn't really have much of a show. And it's funny, I had a... So we did, if you are not aware, I set up a secondary YouTube channel called Stella Culinary Live. And it is where these live broadcasts, the video version of it, will be posted. Now, as you guys know, for the most part, this podcast started as a audio podcast only, and we added the video element mainly because the video element allows me to go live and Facebook or YouTube and interact with you, which is, I think, a really nice part of this whole live stream. So I started uploading these videos to the Stella Culinary Live YouTube channel. So if you're into consuming the live video feed, you can do so there. And it's funny, after we published last week's episode, which was a banger, if you missed it, it was entitled something along the lines of "Food Writers Are Parasites Plus Tendered Stir-Fried Meats," which is great title, right? So the first comment on the YouTube channel was, "Why would I want to listen to you for 2 hours when you can't get to the point?" Like, bro, are you new? How did you even find my channel? Like, I got like 8 subscribers, and the first comment from somebody who subscribed to the channel is telling me to get to the point. That's not how this works. This is a culinary conversation amongst friends, right? If you want me to get to the point, you can go to the youtube.com/Jacob Burton channel, and that's where I do my little 10 to 15 minute videos with specific culinary techniques. This is where we get together on a weekly basis to hang out and chat everything food with you, the Stella Culinary community. So let's see what's going on. I got a lot of things to get to today. I could easily do a 3-hour podcast, but we won't. We'll try and keep this one to about an hour and see how it goes. Hey, I have an idea for you guys that I want to just kind of throw out there before we even get started. And that is, I think I'm ready to hire a video editor. So if you are a video editor, and oh yeah, Dave, I think it was Jeffrey Steingarten that made that comment, but you know, the whole actually, let me step back for a second. All right, because the whole "food writers are parasites" thing, I want to kind of clarify that. First of all, I love everybody, right? I'm a big fan of people. That's why I'm in the hospitality industry in the first place. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. But there was a question of what would Bourdain think about this, because Bourdain was a food writer, but not really. Really, it's food journalist. And there's a difference between content creators and people who write original stuff. And food journalists that kind of go and suck the life force out of the culinary industry. So if you're creating original content and you're a strong voice for the culinary industry, then I got much love for you. If you're constantly chasing down chefs and asking them for recipes so you can post it in, whatever, online or in your newspaper because you're too lazy or too uncreative to come up with content yourself, then you're a parasitic food writer. That's kind of how this whole thing works. So there's a difference between content creators and food writers, in my opinion. So people like Anthony Bourdain, our friends who wrote The Food Lover's Companion and things like that. Like those are content creators, right? So that is the difference. I will be having an oven update. Maybe I'll tease you with that a little bit. I don't want to screw up the punchline. But yeah, so if you are a video editor, like a legit video editor, hit me up. Because I have some ideas. I'm looking to hire somebody. This is not a pro bono thing. So go ahead and email me, jacob@stellaculinary.com. And you can also send me all of your love letters and hate mail there as well. But I'm thinking, with these podcasts, when I start going off on things like, how to make that epic pot roast and the ribs and the tendered stir-fried meat, it seems to me like we might be missing an opportunity here to take those audio segments, cut them up, isolate them, and then I could easily shoot some video. I mean, I have video on my ribs, I have video on my pot roast, I have video on this tender stir fry. And, if I had a good editor, we could put some actual technique videos to the audio that I'm already recording live in these podcasts, and we can produce some videos that way. And this isn't to replace the normal videos that I do where I shoot with the camera and do audio voiceover, but it's just to add to it and enhance. So, and I need somebody to send Zojirushi a bill because we've sold a lot of Zojirushi rice cookers. Last night I was actually shooting video on some tendered stir-fried tri-tip, which of course came out amazing. So the video will be forthcoming on that. But I had made rice in the Zojirushi a couple of nights ago, and I had forgot to turn it off. So it was just hanging out, sitting on my counter. It had literally been on for 47 hours at this point because it said 47 on the little dial, like it tells you on the readout how long it's been on for. So I had cooked the rice 47 hours previously, opened it up, gave it a taste. Tastes damn near perfect. Stuck my probe thermometer in there to make sure I wasn't going to give myself food poisoning. It came in right at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And as you know, if you hold your food at 140 or above, it's going to hold it nice and safe for you so there's no bacterial growth. That is opposed to reheating your food to 165 for all you food safety nerds out there. So another win for the Zojirushi. And the kind of rice that I use is the Calrose medium grain rice. And for people who are confused on the chat, right, we can use both Discord or Facebook live feed. It's completely up to you guys. All right. Now, speaking of Discord, we had a couple of different people dropping in and asking questions. And there seems to be a lot of conversation about gnocchi lately in the Stella Culinary universe. Potato gnocchi, ricotta gnocchi, and people wanting ratios and measurements, and you know that I'm very exacting. I'm the guy who for years has been preaching the gram scale, and I have people that refuse to actually tune into my videos because they refuse to get an actual gram scale, even though it costs them $25 on Amazon. But gnocchi is one of those things that you want to do by feel. All right, you can have some basic ratios, but really it's a touch and feel sort of thing. And this might be a good live video to do. So I'm working on my setup. No promises, but I'm working on my setup to do some live streamed videos, some cook-alongs. Well, actually more like cooking demonstrations live because I think that'll work better. But in my home kitchen, do a live cooking demonstration. I think gnocchi is a good one because you really, to learn how to make it, you want to convey that sense of feel. And once you get that sense of feel, you're going to be able to nail your gnocchi almost every single time. So here's what you want to do. So first of all, let's start with potato because potato is A very common good starting point. And moisture is kind of your enemy in any sort of gnocchi making. Okay, so you always want to dry cook your potatoes first. You want to roast them, or just bake them. So poke some holes in them so they don't explode. Bake them in your oven like you would a normal baked potato. And then, while they're still warm, you want to split them open, scoop them out, and then pass them through a sieve. So, I mean, at a restaurant, I'll use what's called a tamise or a tammy. It's a drum with a screen, right, because we're doing this whole thing in mass. At home, I'll just use just a normal, not like a chinois, but just a normal strainer. And I'll just use the rubber spatula, pass it through, and this is going to, in effect, sort of rice the potatoes and make them smoother and creamier. If you just hand mash them up, you're going to run into some issues. Next, you want to add some moisture, okay? And you add that moisture as with adding egg. And the egg is also going to add some protein, and that protein structure is going to help you to hold everything together. And what you're looking for here is just kind of imagine in your head that you have some dried rice potatoes and you're adding enough moisture to where if you kind of whip your spatula back and forth in it, it's smooth and it looks kind of like moist and creamy, but it's not even anywhere close to mashed potatoes, right? You're just kind of liquefying the potatoes a little bit, okay? So if you have to have a ratio, I would say for one very large potato, one whole egg is going to do it. But eggs are different sizes, so you got to kind of use your judgment. Okay, so you want the potato to be evenly coated in the egg, and also too let the potatoes in the actual bowl, in the mixing bowl, let them cool just a little bit, right? Because if you drop the egg directly into super hot steamy potatoes, the egg's going to start to coagulate, and that pre-coagulation of the egg protein means you're going to have less coagulation when you go to cook it, so it's less likely for your gnocchi to hold together. So with the adding of the egg, if you add a little bit too much, it's not a big deal because we can counterbalance that with the flour, which we're going to add next. Okay, and if you've listened to the bread baking podcast, or if you baked any bread, you know that there's always usually sort of a resting step or an autolyze step, which allows the gluten in the flour to cross-link and to form a gluten structure. This is what gives you your chew. This is what allows you to trap in gas. And this is exactly what you do not want to happen when making gnocchi. Gnocchi needs to be tender, right? You don't want it to be chewy. So if you add in some flour and let it sit, or if you add in too much flour, then it's going to become chewy and dense, which is exactly what you don't want for your gnocchi. So, and also too, let me backtrack for a second. If you want salt, which I recommend, so a little bit of salt, fresh herbs, you add them with the egg. Okay, so potatoes, egg, salt, herbs, whatever you want, because once you incorporate the flour itself, it's time to rock and roll, and it's going to be harder to incorporate the rest of your ingredients. So add in some chive, add in some parsley, if that's what you want. Now you're going to take your flour, and you can sift it if you want. It's really not a big deal, but just sprinkle it in, and using a rubber spatula, you want to fold in that flour. Now remember, when you're working with flour, the more you work it, the more gluten structure you have, which is the enemy of good tender gnocchi. So fold in that flour, fold it in until it absorbs the moisture. And you're looking for a workable dough. And you want to add just enough flour to where your dough is workable with a little bit of dusting on your board. Have your boiling water ready to go, okay? Because again, once you have your dough perfect, it's now time to roll out your gnocchi. So now, using your, 5th grade Play-Doh skills, or 3rd grade, I mean, I still play with Play-Doh, so using your Play-Doh skills, cut off a chunk of your gnocchi dough, which is now resting on your board. Cut it off. Roll it out into a rope, and make the rope as thin or as thick as you want your gnocchi to be. and then using a bench knife or just a regular chef's knife, go down and cut it. Now, when you're rolling out this rope, you're dusting your your cutting board or your work surface. You're dusting it with some flour so it doesn't stick. But again, the whole process is you want to use as little flour as possible, because the more flour you add, the more chewy and gummy your gnocchi will be. So roll it out, give it some cuts, cut it into your little gnocchi chunks, your little pillows. If you want to get fancy and use a gnocchi board, you can. I would never do that at home. I don't even do it in my restaurants, because when I make gnocchi, it's not in the sense of a traditional Italian gnocchi, but you can if you want to. But I just go down, cut them into chunks, and drop it directly into boiling water. When they start to float, that's a pretty good indication that the starch in the flour has gelled, the egg protein has coagulated, and you should have a fairly workable gnocchi. Using your skimmer, skim from the water itself, drop onto a sheet tray that you have oiled with some nonstick spray or a little bit of olive oil, and continue to cook your gnocchi in batches. So it's a pretty simple and straightforward. I think the biggest mistake that people make when cooking gnocchi is they move way too slow, right? And so once you add in your flour, it is time to go. You got to go right away, because the moment, I mean, you got maybe 5 minutes to 10 minutes till that flour fully hydrates. And when that flour fully hydrates, now you start having gluten structure. Now you're going to have to add in more flour, because as that flour fully hydrates, your dough is becoming more cohesive. So I've had issues where a cook will be making the gnocchi in preparation for dinner service, and they add in the flour, and now they go, oh, hey, I have a dough, right? Now I'm busy doing something else. I'm going to set my dough aside in the fridge like it's a pasta dough, and I'm going to come back a couple minutes later, and it's completely toast. Now, the same thing is true for your ricotta. So you have your ricotta. Your ricotta's kind of stiff and lumpy already, so add enough egg to kind of smooth that out a little bit, to add some moisture to the party. Add your seasonings, add your flour, just enough flour to where you have a cohesive dough that you can roll into a rope, rock and roll. Pumpkin gnocchi, sweet potato gnocchi, all the same thing, right? You're starting with your base. Again, you don't want a whole lot of water, because the water is going to waterlog your gnocchi. It's going to force you to add more flour, which, again, the more flour that you add, the more chewy it'll be, the more gluten structure you'll have, right? So you want to roast it. You want to do a dry cooking method. Any sort of dry cooking method will work, right? As long as you make it tender, pass it through that sieve, add in your egg, add in your flour, and you are good to go, ready to rock and roll. So that is your standard potato gnocchi, not to be confused with your Parisian gnocchi, which Parisian gnocchi is completely different, and it's made from a pâte à choux base, which is your basic choux paste, where you are bringing liquid and butter to a boil, cooking your flour, and then adding your eggs, beating them in one at a time. You have something that looks more like a batter, and then you can drop that into boiling water. Let's go through some of your questions here before we move on to the next topic. Good procedure. Full brisket. Here, making brisket. Just going through, kind of collecting my thoughts. We have the gnocchi. All right, this is a good one. When trying to perfect a specific dish, get better at it, is there a good procedure that avoids eating it too consecutively and suffering burnout? Can't make burgers 6 out of 7 days a week and not have family get tired of eating the burgers. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. For the average home cook, you're just going to have to go on a tear for a little bit. Maybe once a week you're making something, twice a week at the tops. But I always take notes on my recipes, and you can usually get pretty close with your recipes after a few tries, just by taking notes on what you did, measuring out the ingredients, and adjusting the flavors as necessary. And then sometimes you have to walk away. So I have notebooks full of ideas and half-baked recipes, quite literally, that they just, for whatever reason, I stopped feeling them in the moment, and so I just walk away, come back a few months later with a little bit of a fresh perspective, and get going. So, and that's one of the biggest advantages that that professional cooks have over home cooks, is just the pure repetition. I mean, when you work on a hotline, you cook so many steaks in a given week, you get really good at cooking steaks extremely fast. If you think about it, I mean, let's say you do 200 covers a night. Even if just 10% of your covers or guests order the steak, which I guarantee you is going to be much more than that, but let's just say it's 10%, then that's 20 steaks that you're cooking every single night, and you do that 5 nights a week, right? Times, so that's 100 steaks a week times 4 weeks in a month. So you're literally on a low level, you're cooking 400 steaks a month as a professional cook, right? If you're cooking steaks at home for you, your wife, and a couple of kids, how many weeks, how many years is it going to take you to cook 400 steaks and consume them without driving people nuts and burning everybody out on steaks? So there definitely is a repetition where you really master that touch and feel working in a professional kitchen. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you should come and work for me for free, because free labor is awesome. And you'll get really good at cooking steaks once you get really good at peeling potatoes and stuff like that. But you can, I mean, if you watch the technique videos that I do and pay attention, you can really move rapidly through your technique progression, because you're consciously making an effort to make your steak better every single time. So take notes, look at what was that failure point, and kind of address that singular failure point. So that's a good starting point. Problem with recipes in general is they're so subjective. So if you like them, then that's really all that matters, until the people that you're serving them to eats it and doesn't like it. So let's see. We covered the gnocchi. We had a question about brisket. This weekend on the pellet grill, how do you select a good brisket? My wife's dad always told me to fold it and see if the tips touch. It's a good one. I'm not sure if that actually tells you much about the quality of the brisket. Maybe more just the size. But if you live in the United States, go to Costco. They have solid brisket. And that's, if you want to get all crazy, you can start buying and ordering like Wagyu brisket and things like that. But if when you go to the meat section at Costco in the U.S., they're carrying a lot of the same meats that you would see in an upscale restaurant. Maybe not so much fine dining, but upscale, right? And you're going to be able to get good quality from Costco. And they always have these prime briskets that look absolutely beautiful. When smoking meats, so Dave lives at 7,200 feet. When smoking meats, do you find that altitude makes a difference in cooking time? That's a really good question. A little bit, yes. And the reason why that happens is because you have what's called evaporative cooling, and evaporative cooling is also what causes the barbecue stall, which is why you wrap your meats to kind of break through that stall when you're cooking on barbecue. And also too, at a certain point, you have the exterior texture done and how you want it, but maybe the internal temperature isn't done yet. So you wrap your meats, and you kind of bust through the barbecue stall that way. And what that does, it actually raises the humidity, or the relative humidity, around the meat itself, and it's going to help to transfer heat better to that meat, because what will happen is as your meat starts to cook, especially in a low and slow environment, you have moisture that gets slowly pushed out of the meat and it settles on the surface. And this moisture on the surface creates a barrier, and that barrier keeps heat from penetrating into the meat, right? So as you have this evaporative cooling effect, it takes longer to break through that. And as you climb in altitude and you get higher and higher, where you actually have less atmospheric pressure, so the boiling point of water is lower, then yeah, it'll take longer. How much longer? It's hard to say, because when you're smoking meats low and slow, number one, everyone's grill is different, everyone's preferred temperature is different. But even if you're doing like 225 to 250-ish, it's really hard to gauge, because steam and boiling water is a constant. So I could tell you, hey, you know, at altitude, if you're at 7,000 feet, expect your pasta that you're boiling, this specific pasta that's this thick, expect it to take 2 minutes longer than usual to cook, right? It's a little bit harder to nail down, so you're going to have to go, just like everywhere else, you're going to have to go by touch and feel. But yeah, when you're looking at, if you're cooking recipes on your smoker at altitude, look for it to be, take a little bit longer than usual. Same thing goes with braising. Same thing goes with stewing. So, and then I know American pancakes or German pancakes. What's your favorite? Oh, I really don't feel like starting a war this morning, so I'm going to say I love them both equally. Now, I know everyone wants a Combi-Oven update, and I was hesitant on whether or not I'm going to give one, only because I might want to make you wait for the video. However, it's probably going to be a while till I put out the legitimate review video, if I ever put it out. You might be saying, Jacob, what are you talking about? You bought that Combi-Oven specifically to review it. I did, but this is why I don't do reviews. Because every single time I start reviewing a product, I think to myself, man, this is taking so much time. Like, they should be paying me a consulting fee for this thing. Now, I enjoy the Combi-Oven so far, and we'll get into that in a second. But when I'm I can't turn off my chef brain when I'm working with products, and so when I do my review and when I give you some of the feedback that we'll do now, I guess, you're gonna see it's so dang valuable that Combi should be paying me thousands of dollars, or not Combi, Anova should be paying me thousands of dollars just for this feedback. All right, you guys ready? So here it goes. All right, so those of you who've been following along in the Facebook group, you saw that I did a little post when my Combi-Oven arrived, and the box was beat to hell. Those hay hooks that cowboys use to like take bales of hay and like transfer it from the back of their truck, and they're tossing hay around. That's what my Combi-Oven box looked like, right? So you have a $700 or $600 precision cooker with humidity sensors and the steam injectors and all that sort of stuff sitting in this box, and it's just getting tossed around. So I was kind of disappointed to see that, but you can't exactly blame that on Anova, right? Once they box it and ship it, it's their side is done. But I mean, at a certain point, Anova needs to be concerned with the fact that they're shipping out these relatively expensive pieces of equipment, and whoever they're using, whoever their carrier is, it isn't really handling them with care. And when I mentioned this in the Facebook group, a couple other people said, yeah, I've seen that as well. I think somebody said my friend had an oven shipped to him, and it looked the box itself looked pretty rough. Now, with that said, Anova did a great job of packing the oven itself. So it was nice, solid styrofoam, sort of all the way around, well insulated. It was really stuck in there. And when I started to open the box, my concerns were alleviated in the sense that I really felt that they had shipped it in a well-protected container. So I didn't see like any physical damage on the outside, And even though it looked like it got jostled around during shipping, I didn't really feel like it could have affected the oven in a bad way. So open it up, fired it up, and you go through this whole heating process where you got to heat it up using the rear element first, I think, and then you use like the top and bottom element second, and then you let it cool, and that kind of burns off that factory smell, the oils, the polishes that they use for the stainless steel inside. The oven itself is constructed nicely. It's fairly heavy, right? It's a nice heavy oven. The walls are thick, and it just has a nice feel about it. Like it feels like a quality piece of equipment. They have these cool little, on the handle of the oven, they have little digital dials that you can press. Now, being somebody who's used an iPhone for 10 years, I wish that the buttons on these handles were a little bit more responsive. Okay, but once you start using their app, which is really well put together, you'll probably never touch those buttons again. But it's a very small quibble, right? It's just something that, when you, so for example, when you're setting the temperature, you're setting the timer on the handle, you start pressing the button and it's ding, 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 ding. And then you start pressing it faster so it goes faster. Now you can hold the button down. It does that thing where like it rapidly, jumps from 5 to 10 to 15, but it also speeds up really quick. So it's hard to actually set a precise temperature. So I find myself actually, tapping that button, or especially when it's setting the timer, tap, 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 tap. And there's just certain times where you tap the button when you're tapping it rapidly and you don't see any change, right? So again, small quibble, but as a user interface thing, it's some feedback that I had, tap, 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 it could be better. However, they do a really good job with their iPhone app, or their, I have an iPhone, so that's kind of the universe I live in, but their mobile app. So they have one for Android, they have one for the iPhone, and the interface is really nice, makes it very intuitive to use, and the whole machine itself is very intuitive to use. So I messed around making a roasted chicken. Did a beer can chicken, but used a can of diet root beer instead, because I didn't have any canned beer in the house. And really, the liquid in the can is inconsequential. It doesn't really add any flavor to what you're cooking. And kind of ran it through some various processes. Now, to backtrack a little bit, I'm looking through this app, and I'm trying to figure out a good analogy to describe the recipes that they have in this app. So and maybe you guys can help me figure out the analogy, because when you look at the app, they've done a very good job of loading it up with a bunch of base recipes. And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not really sure these people understand like the magic of this oven, right? They're using it a lot like a traditional oven, or they're using it a lot like a sous vide and sear setup. So even with and there are some misconceptions about this in our Facebook group when we were talking about combi ovens and what they can truly do, right? So in a normal sous vide setup, you would sous vide your meat, you would pull it out, you'd let it rest, and then you'd sear it. And you see a lot of people doing that with the combi oven as well, right? They'll sous vide the meat, bring it up to temp, so you're doing like a whole chicken, right? Sous vide it, bring it up to temp, pull it out, let it rest, then heat your oven back up, put it on the roast phase, and then blast it. Fine approach, but it kind of defeats the whole purpose of a combi oven, right? The great thing about a combi oven, and the one thing that I really was hoping that the Anova combi oven would allow me to do, is really set the stages of the cooks. Because when you can set the stages of the cooks, you have complete control of the entire cooking cycle. And as long as the oven gives you consistent results, meaning 150 is always 150. 80% steam is always 80% steam. And it's its version of 80% steam. As long as it stays consistent within the system, right, you can adjust your recipes to flow from one stage to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And I don't see a whole lot of that in the Anova Culinary app, right, with the recipes that they build. There's still a lot of steam and pull, sous vide and pull, rest, right, that sort of thing. So let me tell you about this beer can chicken that I did. Or root beer can chicken. Now, if you've watched my chicken videos in the past where I'm roasting chicken, either on the barbecue or where I'm spatchcocking it, I do the boiling water trick, right? So you take some boiling water, electric kettle, pour it over the skin. What that does is it breaks down the collagen in that skin, and the collagen will bind to moisture and make it harder for that skin to crisp. So if you give it a little hot water treatment before roasting, you're going to get better, crispier skin. So I thought to myself, well, this thing has a steam injection oven, right? Or it has a steam injection, so can I skip this step? And the answer is yes. What I did is I took the chicken whole, rubbed it with some mustard to get my seasoning stick, used some meat church seasoning, which I love, by the way. I got for a Christmas presents, and seasoned up the chicken. I stuck it on the root beer can, and then put that on a tray and put that on the lowest level of my oven. And the settings that I set were, I'm actually going to pull up my app here so I can review the cook. And it wasn't perfect first time around, right? But I was able to reproduce a respectable roasted chicken from start to finish. And so my cooks, so what I did, I don't want to do that, no. So this is another thing, right? I'm pulling up the app here. It's too bright, you can't see it, I guess. But I just want to review what I did, and it's asking me if I want to fire back up my oven. And the answer is no, I don't. So I'll go from memory. I'll figure out how to review it later. So basically what I did is I set the initial stage, and let me say the coolest thing about this oven, which you would expect from a professional combi oven, but I wasn't sure if it would have this feature, is it has a built-in probe thermometer that is monitored by the oven, which allows you to designate the stages. So, which is awesome. Totally awesome, okay? And the reason is this. How long do you cook something for? What's the correct answer? Come on, shout it out. I know you know it. How long do you cook something for? Well, I don't know. Come on, how long do you cook something for? That's right. Until it's done. Until it's done, right? The visual cue, so the times in recipes are there to give you some guideposts, right? It's going to take you about 45 minutes. It's going to take you about 60 minutes, okay? But that's why any well-written recipe is going to have visual cues and technical cues as well. So, how long do you roast your chicken at 350 degrees Fahrenheit? Well, how big's your chicken? How good's your oven, right? So let's take that out of the conversation for a second. Roast your chicken at 350 degrees for 1 hour or until the skin is crispy golden brown and the thickest part of the thigh meat reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit, right? Just as an example. Now, you know I like to cook mine lower, but we won't even get into that. So, the true measure of doneness, the true measure of when a cook is done, is largely based on the internal temperature. So, the fact that it allows me to set my stages in the app based on internal temperature instead of time is awesome. It makes all the difference in the world. And I was really happy to see that the Ovens app allows me to set as many stages as I want and really fine-tune those stages and set them based on the internal temperature. So for my roasted chicken, I stuck the probe into the breast and I said, hey, oven, I want you to do full steam at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, right? And just blast this chicken with steam until it reaches an internal temperature of 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Because I figured at this point, the skin will have had the collagen evenly broken down, and it'll start to heat the core of the chicken. And because we know that steam or water transfers heat much more rapidly than the air in your oven, right? So I can actually cook this chicken at a lower temperature, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, but using steam, I could still bring up the core temperature pretty rapidly versus if you stick a chicken in a 212 degree oven. It's going to take forever for it to reach an internal temperature of 110, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I said, hey, stage one, steam until it hits that core temperature of 110. Then I want you to turn on the rear heating element and the top heating element with the convection fan at full blast. The convection fan helps to move heat around the oven. And I want you to roast this bad boy until it hits an internal temperature of 155. Then at 155, I want you to drop the oven temperature to 150. So when the chicken hits an internal temperature of 155, I want you to drop the oven temperature to 150, and I want you to kick on some steam at 20%. That 20% steam is going to help to regulate the oven temperature because, again, even though the internal temperature or the air in the oven is at 150 degrees, it doesn't transfer heat that well, right? So adding a little bit of steam should allow you to keep the product more evenly warmed while it's resting, and also to keep the skin itself from drying out. Okay, you guys follow me so far? So program that all into the phone, stuck the chicken in there, press start, and it went through the whole cycle from start to finish flawlessly. Change, rested. It was great. Now, where it wasn't so great, it was completely not even the oven's fault. It's my fault, even though it can't be, right? It's still in the testing phase, right? Meaning that the skin got a little bit too dark, right? So what that tells me is instead of at a 110 internal, maybe I switched to roasting at a 120 internal. And the carryover peaked a little bit too much, where it hit the 155, it dropped the temperature down to 150 automatically, added in that little bit of steam. But as we know, you have that carryover cooking, so the internal temperature of the chicken rose to like 163. And so I kind of missed the mark there, but again, I'm just getting used to this oven. So by adjusting the stages in the future, I will be able to more dial in the what I call the swings in temp, right? So you have a certain swing up, a certain swing down. How long does it take for my oven to cool off? How long does it take for it to heat up? And how long does it take for the meat that it's working with to basically respond to the changes in the oven? But the fact that I could do that from start to finish opens up a really amazing world, right? That before you really couldn't do in a home kitchen unless you were spending $10,000 on a very unique oven. So this was saved just for professional cooking environments. One thing that I wish the oven had, and this, oh, excuse me, missed the cough button there. This would take the oven from like really good to amazing, absolutely amazing. And I don't know how hard it would be to add this. It is an external venting fan. So they have a vent in the bottom corner of this oven that vents the steam and also vents some heat. And with the convection fan, it kind of pushes the hot air out when you're dropping temperature. But from switching from stage to stage to stage, especially when I want to do a heating and then cooling cycle, so I want to roast something and I want to drop it down to a holding temp, having an external venting fan would be awesome, because then in a secondary stage, I could say, okay, so I've just been roasting my chicken at 375 until it hits an internal of 155, but I want to halt this carryover cooking, and the best way to halt it is by having the chicken in a cold environment or a colder environment. So oven, what I want you to do is I want you to drop the temp to 150, and I want you to kick on your external venting fan, which is basically a fan that just sucks all the hot air and all the steam out of the oven. Now, this is also going to be really nice if you're baking bread, because you go through this phase where you want to steam your bread first to give you that nice thin crackly crust, and then you want to bake the bread, right? So if you in professional ovens, you have an actual fan that vents it out, which is super cool if they could add this. Now, could you just open the door to allow it to vent? Yeah, you could, but kind of takes the whole, the whole automation factor away, right? When I set something on automation, I just want to be able to let it go. So that would be really, really cool. Outside of that, when you order this oven, if you decide to order it, they don't do a very good job of upselling you, right? So in the pictures, they show like baking stones when they're baking bread. They show perforated pans on top of the sheet tray that they send with it, and they don't offer any of that on their website. They don't offer to upsell it to you. It doesn't come in the box. So in the box, along with the oven, you basically get 2 wire racks and a flimsy quarter sheet tray. So if you want to equip this oven a little bit more, you want to order stuff that has a quarter sheet tray kind of sizing to it, and that's what you're going to be using. And also, too, the sheet tray that they send is pretty low quality. And this is stuff where, honestly, I would like to have a premium package. This isn't a $200 or $300 toaster oven, right? If you're gonna charge me $600 for an oven, which is still a great deal, if we're being honest, charge me $700, charge me $800. As honestly, as long as this thing is under $1,000, 1K is the break point, right? The fact that you have a combi oven that's this responsive, that it can sit on your kitchen counter, it's the size of a large microwave, and you can get that for under $1,000. It's a great deal. It's a great deal, and I strongly urge you, if you're interested in this oven, to buy it, because you will. I think you will very much so enjoy it. And they also offer a 100-day money-back guarantee, right? And it sounds like I'm selling it, but I'm not, because I bought it with my own money. They have no idea I'm doing this review, and that's how I like it, because it's too much trouble doing it other ways. The point being that, send me a baking stone, send me some perforated pans, or at least allow me to add on to the package, right? Say, hey, do you like bread baking? Click yes, and we'll charge you $40 to send you a stone. So once I got it, I had to go back on Amazon and buy some baking stones. Now, the other thing too is, as I said, they are a quarter pan size, right? So if you're looking as far as like restaurant supply stores, you want quarter pan silpats, quarter pan pans, quarter pan perforateds. And when you take a half sheet tray, which is, you have a full sheet tray, which doesn't fit in a regular home oven. You have a 3/4 sheet tray, which most people don't know about, but that fits like perfectly in most home ovens, and that's going to give you the most maximum room and space. And then you have a half sheet tray, which is what your normal like rolled rim baking tray that you'll see in home kitchens. Especially like professional chefs, right? Because we kind of live in that universe. So I have half sheet trays. I have half sheet tray silpats and racks and that sort of stuff. The oven is just barely, like maybe by a half an inch, just barely too narrow to fit a half sheet tray. And if this thing fit a half sheet tray cleanly, and what I like is they have the grooves for the oven racks on both sides. So if this thing fit a half sheet tray cleanly in its oven grooves, it would be absolutely amazing. It would just be such a nice feature. And I'm not an engineer. I don't know how much it would cost to get this thing to, expand the interior by half an inch, but it would be worth every single penny. Let's see. Outside of that, that's pretty much it. I'm still playing with it. So here's sort of another scenario, and you guys know that I love my tri-tip, right? I love my marinade. So I think a couple episodes back we were talking about I think we were talking about the pan roasted tri-tip. I don't know if we ever got into the teriyaki marinated tri-tip, but I love, and because this is a good meal prep thing. So on the weekends, I'll run to the store and buy a bunch of meat for the week, right? So, I'll go to Costco, grab like their 2-pack of tri-tip, grab a couple of chickens, maybe grab like a side of salmon and some cod, and so that way I'm kind of stocked for the week. And then my weeknight cooks are pretty simple, where it's usually just a protein, a vegetable, and sometimes a starch, like either some steamed rice or a potato or something like that. Okay. So what I'll do on Sunday is I start dropping stuff in brines and in marinades. So the chicken I'll drop into a brine. One of the tri-tips I'll slice up, and I'll do the alkaline style marinade that we talked about in last week's episode. So that way I have this sliced, thin, marinated meat sitting in my fridge in a Ziploc bag that I can pull handfuls of at any time and do a really quick stir fry and have for dinner. And then I have a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take a whole tri-tip for a roast, and I'll drop it in a Ziploc bag, and I'll add a bottle of teriyaki sauce, right? And you have the salt and the sugar and the soy and the teriyaki that basically works as a brine, right? Because you have that salt migrate in, it starts to partially dissolve the protein filaments, and it allows it to hold on to more moisture, and also breaks down some of the collagen, making the whole thing more tender. So this is a really good oh shit meal, right? And what I'll do is during the week, and it's usually in the morning, right? Because I get up in the morning, I get ready for work, I fill my mug up with coffee, usually actually a to-go cup like this guy. I fill it up with some coffee. I reach into my fridge for a little splash of cream, and I see my Ziploc bag holding my teriyaki tri-tip, and I give it a flip, right? That's just kind of like my weekly rituals. Or my daily rituals. I reach in, I go, oh snap, I got a tri-tip right there. I better flip this thing, right? And so I flip it like once a day, and it works out perfectly. So on day 5 to 7, now it's time to cook it. And what I do is I pop it into my regular oven at 350 with a probe thermometer, and I bring it up to about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, at which point the exterior of this tri-tip is looking pretty roasty toasty, right? Because you have the addition of the sugar from the teriyaki marinade that helps it to brown. So you got those nice, it's kind of like perfect at 110. I don't want to eat it at that internal temperature, but the exterior look is perfect. So what do? Well, I take a plate out of the barbecue cookbook, and I just wrap it in some foil. This causes indirect heat, a nice moist environment, and I stick it back in the oven with that probe thermometer. I bring it up to 132-ish, 130, right? I usually set my thermometer for 132 because I know there's going to be a little bit of carryover cooking, not a ton, because we're not blasting this at like 475, right? We're cooking this at 350. And anywhere from 6 to 8 degrees of carryover. I like my tri-tip right between mid-rare and medium, because you have a little bit of extra connective tissue. That medium-ish temperature is not high enough, which is technically like a 140 internal Fahrenheit, like 60 degrees Celsius. It's not enough to actually start to dry the meat out, but it is enough to make the meat a little bit more tender. And what's nice, because this meat is marinated, and you finish with this steam approach in this pouch, it's really kind of like it's blobby, right? Like in a good way. Like, when you see like a perfectly cooked brisket, and they push it and they go to slice it, and like it has like this bouncy sort of blobby juiciness to it, which is absolutely amazing. And this is kind of how that tri-tip comes out. So you let it rest in the foil, and you slice it up, and it's really good. And it's a solid meal that you could just pull out at any time during the week. And it takes maybe, I don't know, an hour, hour and a half from start to finish. Now, but it also takes a little bit of babysitting, right? You have to catch the meat at the right temperature. You have to wrap it at the right temperature. So you got to kind of keep an eye on it. So to kind of circle back around to the Combi-Oven, that's a great way to roast a tri-tip. Okay, so you could just use that in your regular home oven. Now we can automate this process, and we can throw in some tricks that we know from our understanding of how we cook meat in general, and also our understanding of sous vide, right? So here's my approach. Here's what I'm going to test. Now, I know that this approach will work. As far as the stages and the transitions, at what point we transition from what stage to the next, well, we'll just have to figure it out, right? We'll have to see, and then just, it's going to take a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimenting, which you all know I love to do. So we take this tri-tip that I have sitting in my fridge right now. I'm probably going to cook it on a Saturday. Stick the internal probe thermometer in. Now, if I want this to get done within an hour to an hour and a half, I could probably get away with doing some form of a low temperature steam roast. So say I set the oven at 250 or maybe 300 with 60% steam, and this keeps the meat from browning, and I bring it up to like 120 internal. Then I turn off the steam, I crank up the oven automatically through the program, roast at say 350, 375, the meat browns. Then it switches over to its holding temp once it hits 132. What I'm thinking for kind of like the ultimate marinated tri-tip cook is if it's the weekend and you have time, you kind of do this sous vide style approach to it, where I would set my temperature, and so it's kind of like a combination of like sous vide plus reverse sear plus a holding step plus an enzymatic tenderizing step. And here's how it would play out. Tri-tip comes out of the marinade in the bag onto a baking tray. Stick in the internal probe thermometer, and you set your oven to your sous vide mode. And say you want to set it, well, probably I'd set it to 115-ish, 110-ish, right? Because what I want to do for the ultimate tri-tip is I want the oven to bring this tri-tip up to an internal temperature of 110, and I want to hold it there for 2 to 4 hours. Now, if you think back to our original sous vide episode, I think it's like episode 26, 27, somewhere in that area, we talk about the enzymes in meat that get hyperactivated for 2 to 4 hours within a temperature range of about 110 degrees Fahrenheit, so about 100 to 110, right? And what these enzymes do at that temperature is they hyperactivate and they tenderize your meat. And they also they're kind of similar to the enzymes that go into play during dry aging, so they could also add some more flavor to the meat as well by breaking down some of the muscle fibers. So what we can do is we can add this tenderization step by bringing the meat up using the sous vide mode and holding it there for 4 hours or 2 hours, right? Whatever floats your boat. Then have that sous vide mode kick back in and then bring that tri-tip up to an internal temperature of say 135, right? So now I'm doing the sous vide, and now I haven't played with it much, right? But with combi ovens, usually you'll set the temperature a little bit higher, about 5 degrees higher than what you want your finished internal temperature to be, because even though the steam is very efficient, it's still not exactly as efficient at transferring temperature as an actual water bath itself. Now you can actually, as a side note, you can cook in a bag just like you would sous vide in this oven. And once you have that sort of barrier, that liquid surrounding it, you might want to adjust the temp accordingly. So you might have, if you want an internal temperature of 140, you have to adjust to 140. So that's something to look at, and that's something that I have to play with more. So, but let's say I want my internal temperature to finish at say 135-ish. So now I set my sous vide temp to 140. I have it slowly bring the tri-tip up to 135. and then I kill the oven temperature. And I say, okay, oven, I want you now to basically shut off, which isn't an option in the app. And this is where the venting fan would come in real handy. But I'm going to tell the oven, hey, you're only at 140 degrees right now. So you're not super hot. So I want you to turn off and I want you to drop down to, say, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, right? And I want you to drop all the way down until the internal temperature of this tri-tip hits 110. What are we doing here? We're doing a cooling step just like we would when cooking with reverse sear. Okay, but we're doing it all automatically. We're doing it all via automation. So now it drops down to 110. The internal probe says, hey, oven, I'm at 110. What do you want me to do next? Well, what I want you to do next in stage 4 is I want you to turn on the roasting element, and I want you to kick the fan to high speed, and I want you to roast this tri-tip back up to 130 degrees internal. And now you get that finished, roasted, sort of glazed look. And now when it hits that 130 degree internal, because again, we've already hit 135, right? So I'm just guessing that it's going to take 20 degrees of internal temperature to get the exterior of my tri-tip to where I want it to be. Okay, it's a guess. Now, if it's too dark, well, then next time I'll adjust that stage accordingly, right? So you kind of have to just get in there and play with it. Now, when you hit the theoretical internal temperature of 130, and the tri-tip is perfectly roasted, now, oven, what I want you to do is I want you to drop back down to a holding temperature. So I want you to set the oven to 150. So we're not using sous vide, right? We're using dry air with just a little bit of moisture. So we're going to do 20% humidity. So the main dry air heat at 150 with a little bit of humidity is going to then allow that tri-tip to rest, and at this point I can hold it there indefinitely for the next couple of hours, and I can slice it whenever I want to. Now you might be saying, well, why don't you just hold it with sous vide? Well, sous vide it introduces a little bit too much steam, and at this point I already had the Maillard reaction. I already had sort of this crust formed on my tri-tip, and I want to preserve that a little bit. I don't want that to get waterlogged. And because the oven works with relative humidity, it actually works with by sensing the wet bulb temperature. It does a really good job of adjusting just the amount of moisture in the oven to convey that temperature during sous vide. So you could probably hold it with a bag of sous vide, but I'd have to play with it more. But I know you can hold at, say, 150 dry air with 20% humidity. So, kind of an involved process, right? But here's how it translates. Once you have this thing nailed, you program that into your phone. You call it the ultimate tri-tip recipe. It's Sunday morning, right? You're gonna have some friends over later for dinner, or for maybe it's for a Super Bowl, right? So you wake up, you take your tri-tip that's been marinating all week in your marinade of choice. You plop it on your pan, you stick in your internal probe thermometer, you fire up your phone, and you press start. That's it. You walk away. About 6 hours later, you're ready to slice whenever you want. Oh, you got a little bit busy. Maybe the game went into overtime. You're watching the Super Bowl half show. No worries. The oven will hold it there for a couple hours. You're good to go. Right? So that's the power. That's the true power of a combi steam oven. And initially looking at this thing, I think it's something that we can get done with this oven, which is cool. So for me, it's a strong buy. I really enjoy working with it. Now, I haven't, I'm still in the play mode, but looking at what the oven can do, theoretically, I know it can do the things that I want to do. Now, maybe in a month from now, I'll absolutely hate it. Who knows? So, if you got $600 burn a hole in your pocket, and you're not going to miss it, and you enjoy to cook, and you want to play along with me at home, buy the oven, right? Now, do you need this oven to be a great cook? No, absolutely not. You need to be you need technique and knowledge to be a great cook. And by the way, before we started this discussion, what did I say? I said that this is why I don't do reviews, okay? Because I start talking about stuff, and I mean, if that wasn't the best sales letter and information for a single cooking product, right? I mean, we should be come on, guys. Like, who's going to do my invoicing? I mean, we got an outstanding bill that Zojirushi has yet to pay. We now got to send over an invoice to Anova, right? I mean, what's with all this free advertising? If it wasn't for my bad business sense, I'd have none at all. All right, so let's go through your comments here before we sign off. I have a lot more to talk about, but I think you gotta always want people, leave people wanting more. It's kind of like people always ask, in fancy restaurants, why do they always do small dishes, right? Well, the idea behind small dishes is you want people, when they finish that dish, you want them to enjoy it, obviously. But when they finish that dish, you want them to wish they had one more bite. Man, that dish was so good, but I wish I had one more bite, right? Especially in a multi-course tasting menu, okay? Because here's the thing. You get a dish, you start to eat it. First couple of bites are great. I mean, assuming that the chef executed properly. Now, think of how your mental mindset changes when you take that dish, you drop your fork, and you push that dish away, right? Your last impression of that dish is you pushing it away. Now think of how much more you would enjoy that dish through your memory if when you took that last bite, you're like, damn it, I wish I had one more bite. That's what the Stellar Culinary Podcast is. We can go on for hours and hours and hours, but I have to leave you wanting more. However, so I was going to get to, we were going to talk chili. We'll have to punt that to next week. We were going to talk about Quat's garlic bread. Actually, let's get into Quat's garlic bread just for a second because she said, I don't want it to be too fancy. I don't want to get all crazy with it. It's not the kind of crowd that I want. I said, you know what, Quat, you're speaking my language. Here's what you need. You need mayonnaise in your life. Mayonnaise is the superior fat transfer for garlic bread when going into sort of that Americanized style of, like Texas toast, garlic bread, or trust me. And take a little bit of mayo, you add in your garlic powder, add in some celery salt, whatever it is, some fresh herb, you spread it on, pop it in your oven, you're good to go. Also, too, mayo is the preferred fat of choice for grilled cheese. So, if you're not using mayonnaise for your grilled cheese, you are missing the mark. More butter, more better. Yep, but there's always an exception to the rule, and that is with white trash, garlic bread, and grilled cheese. Let's see. So, with respect to the half-size pan and the APO, that's another thing. I joined in the Anova, one of the Anova culinary communities, and everyone calls it APO, and I'm already sick of it. No offense, Tuber, but it's like, I don't know. The acronym just drives me nuts. Oh, I'm gonna take my APO and do this and that this weekend. So could you mod, example, bend edges in file, etc.? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could. If you're a good steel worker, or a good guy, you could definitely mod your pans. That's another thing. So in professional kitchens, you see us use hotel pans a lot, right? And they're just kind of like the broad sort of baking dishes. They come in different depths. If you're unfamiliar, just type in hotel pan. And half hotel pans, they fit nicely in the oven. What would be really cool, and what you see in professional steamers and also in professional ovens, they have spacers, right, that allow you to rack your hotel pans directly into the oven. So you don't need an actual tray to do it. You can just rack them. And this is really nice when you're steaming a lot of product. I can take my perforated hotel pans that have holes in it that allow steam through, and I can rack it directly into my steam oven. And then the steam kind of envelops the food, and it's a really efficient way to cook. It's also a great way for prep. So if you got a lot of vegetables you need to blanch, right? We're not in banquets when we're doing 300 dinners for 300 people. And by the way, that's not our only dinner, right? We're doing one dinner for 300 over here, another dinner for 200 over here, right? So in banquets, instead of sitting there and paying someone to stand over a big, massive pot of boiling water and blanch and blanch and blanch and change the water and blanch and blanch and blanch, we do all of our blanching and all of our par cooking, whether it's par cooking potatoes or green beans or whatever, we do it with steam, and we do it in a steamer. So we load up our perforated hotel pans, usually 2 inches, because if you do like the 4 or the 6 inch, it gets too deep and it gets too dense, so it doesn't cook as evenly, and we just rack it directly into the steam oven. So a really cool product that if there's a metal maker out there who wants to make, I will buy it from you and I will hawk it on this podcast, and we will sell it together. And all I want in return is just you to make this thing. Is if you took some metal spacers that on one side had grooves that fit the hotel pan, the half hotel, so you could basically slide your half hotel pan directly into those grooves, and on the other side you had the proper width to where it fit directly into the rack grooves of the Anova precision cooker, right? So that way I could take these spacers, slide them directly onto my hotel pan, and that would suspend my hotel pan within the APO, as the cool kids call it. So what that allows me to do is, in the hotel pans, you can cook all sorts of really great bread puddings. You could use it for braising. You can use, and then you get the perforated ones. You can use it for steaming. So there's lots of different things that you can do. That's versatile. Now it's possible that I might be overthinking this, because I'm thinking about production, right? I always think about production and efficiency. That's how my brain is wired as a professional chef. With the 2 oven racks that come with the Anova, you can do a perforated pan. You can do 2 half perforated pans, or you can do 2 half pans in the oven, however you want to mix and match it. And for most home applications, that's going to be plenty of food. Even if you're blanching like a ton of vegetables, doing it in stages where 2 half hotel pans could steam quite a bit of vegetables. So you set your steamer for, say, 12 minutes, pull them out, ice them, do another round. You could steam probably 20 pounds of vegetables within a half hour to 45 minutes, which is pretty good for a home environment. Let's see. Reading through your comments. Discord, I will get to you in a second. Right now I'm reading through the live comments on Facebook, which are working this week, which is great. So, amazing. Listening to your review of the Anova oven. Just FYI, they are working on accessories according to one of their employees. A jelly roll tray is a good size, and as you know, slightly larger than the 4th sheet. And I agree, it should have been a half sheet. Lodge does make a griddle that fits on the rails. Okay, that's cool. From Suzanne. So they're working on the some of the accessories, but it's a small quibble, but also it's a miss. Okay, and here's why. It looks like the tray the actual cooking tray that they send with the Anova is like custom made, and because it's custom made, they use really cheap metal, so it warps easily and bends easily, and it's kind of just flimsy in general, right? You're not Apple, okay? I'm not living in your walled culinary garden, all right? So you have to make this thing interchangeable, because here's the thing: you go through the app. Right, you look at the recipes. The people who created this oven don't even really know how to use it. I mean, as far as like getting like the full use out of it, they're still missing the mark. So what's going to make this oven really take off and make people adopt it is guys like me who are like, wait a second, I can kind of hack into a $40,000 oven, but in my home kitchen, right? You need to have some universal elements to this on the sizing and the racking and things like that. You need to allow your oven to play nicely with pre-existing tools, because you can't even imagine how I would equip my oven and what I would do with it, right? You give me the tools to create these things. Now I need to be able to fit my half sheet trays. I need to be able to rack my perfs. I mean, I got so many freaking ideas, right? I mean, the biggest issue that I have is I run the risk of my entire YouTube channel turning into an unpaid ad for Anova Culinary. Okay, so when you launched Anova with this oven, you should have just found a supplier who could send you 1,000 sheet trays at a time, and 1,000 this at a time, and 1,000 baking stones at a time, right? Instead of trying to go in and create all your accessories, and have, that sort of walled garden approach. And I don't know if that's what you guys did, right? But that's kind of how it feels, right? When you sell me a $600 oven, you should be prepared to allow me to accessorize it to my heart's desire, because if I was able to fit half sheet trays and all the different universal components like the wire racks and the silpats and the perfs and all these different things that already exist in professional kitchens that fit within a half sheet tray, right? I could jump right in. I could jump right in without skipping a beat and start cooking and start producing food that you as the oven manufacturer haven't even imagined, right? Based on the weak-ass recipes I see in your app. I bought a Gosney pizza oven, and the recipes are weak. The app is great. Okay, just want to be clear on that. I just bought a Gosney pizza oven in November. How can I tell my wife that we need a Combi-Oven? Here's my approach. The box shows up, and my wife's like, "Babe, there's a really heavy box out there," and I'm like, "Oh, cool." And I just kind of just bring it into the house, and she's like, "What is that?" I'm like, it's kind of like a microwave that cooks with steam, and okay, and usually it stops there, but let's see. I sous vide a tri-tip at 110 for 4 hours and bring it up to 135 for 8 hours. Is that what you're getting at with the sous vide process? Not the oven. Yeah, Chris. So what I'm saying is, with that whole process that I ran you through, with the tri-tip, is you could do that from start to finish by programming your oven. So it'll bring your tri-tip up to 110 internal. It'll hold it there to tenderize. It'll then bring it up to your finished internal temperature. If you like it at 140, which is a dead medium, it'll do it at 140. Then it'll automatically drop it back down, allow it to cool. Once it's cool enough to where you don't have the carryover cooking, right? Because what we know about sous vide is if you take your tri-tip out of a 140 bag, it's perfectly at 140. You sear it on a hot pan, it's going to jump up, right? And that's how you get well done sous vide meats. So with this approach, you basically allow it to drop back down, so that way when you crank on the roasting element and the convection fan, it will roast the exterior without overcooking the meat. So it's your basic reverse sear. And the oven, you can program it to do all this by yourself. Now also too, I would really like to have a web interface for their app, because I don't like being on my phone punching and stuff all day. Most people do, so again, but having like a web interface version would be cool, preferably with like a DOS interface, so I could feel like a real geek, right? If you like force me to use PHP code to program the oven, I'm happy as a clam, right? That is gonna be just full geek mode. So yeah, so web interface, and give me a DOS interface to program it. You should come out with your own appliance range, chef. I should, but man, that takes a lot of time, and I'm already out of time. But boy, do I have some ideas. So if you are a legitimate product manufacturer, right, and you want to partner up, we will take over the world, right? Because there's a couple. So it's the same thing. I've actually, not to get too far off tangent, right? But I've had some pretty solid ideas for some technological interfaces as well for restaurants and restaurant kitchens. Really to do with like business financing, kind of how you track your numbers, inventory control. Because here's what all the technology that we use within restaurants for the most part, especially like your POSs and your inventory controls, is some of it's better than others, but I get the sense that none of them were created by anyone who spent any sort of time in the industry. Maybe somebody worked as a line cook or worked as a server for a couple of years, but they didn't spend a couple of decades. What they did is they did some market research, and they said, hey, this inventory software will really fill a need within the restaurant space, so they go out and they create it. and it's good, it's usable, and it gets you like 85 to 90% there. But if they had a chef that actually advised them on how they should get that finished 10%, their product would be a lot better, right? There's just some misses, and the same thing with the oven, right? And to be fair, I don't know what kind of conversations they had around the oven and the price point. I'm sure they did a ton of market research. I mean, Anova is no slouches, right? So this is me just talking shit on my podcast, throwing stuff out there. I totally, I mean, they created a great product. They created, even if you could not sous vide, right? If you didn't have the temperature control, if you didn't have the wet bulb set, right? If this was just a steam injection oven for $600 that I could bake an amazing boule in or some baguettes in, I'm sold. It's like, hey, this is only for baking bread. Cool, sign me up, right? So they did a great job on their market research and their pricing. They somehow figured out how to make this oven for $600. But what I would have liked to have said if I was on the Anova culinary board, I would have, raised my hand and been, hey guys, how much would it raise the price to implant an external venting fan? Right? So you could have these really cool stages where you have control of that temp going up, which happens very rapidly because you have steam injection and the oven heats up really fast because it has a great, a good, robust convection fan. But what about the cooling step, right? How do we get to cool faster? Can we add a venting fan? How much would that cost? Hey guys, if you stretch it if you stretch the internal just another inch, you know that we can get half sheet trays in there, right? Like, do you know how that would just change the whole game if you get a half sheet tray in there and you could rack it directly on the rails? You don't have to put it on the actual wire rack of the oven. You can rack a half sheet tray directly on the rails. Hey guys, let's talk to a metal person and let's get some spacers so they can throw the half hotels directly in the oven, right? And here's the thing. As a professional chef, I might be completely detached, right? The home cook could be like, dude, I don't give a shit about half pans. I don't give a shit about your perforated hotels and racking them directly. Like, dude, you're way overthinking this, and that's probably fair as well. But I'm just saying. PHP, are you from the past? What are you telling me that you don't program websites in PHP anymore? Oh wait, no, I don't want to leave the live chat. Yeah, I am from the past. Okay, so I think that's enough of a free ad for Anova Culinary. You're welcome, guys. You wrote me in, you tricked me into doing it again, and I paid you $600 for it. God, I'm such a dummy. Just going through the Discord questions here. John says he needs to replace his old chipped radiant cooktop at home. What would I go with? Gas or induction? All my pans are induction ready. You can edit your message on. Okay. Yeah. So John, someone helped John out. When did we discuss induction versus gas? Was that the last episode or the episode before? In the last two episodes, we've discussed it, but really. It's pretty easy to go with both. There's a learning curve with induction. People tend to like gas, but there's as long as you get a pan hot, you're fine. This Sunday I'm going to a small Super Bowl party. I'm planning on smoking and taking ribs, either spare ribs or baby back. Pounds of ribs to buy per person. That's hard to answer only because how much other food do you have at the party? Are they going to do a main course too, or is the ribs going to be the main course? In general, though, for every adult, especially in a party-like atmosphere, I like to plan for 5 ribs per person. And I know there's guys out there that put down a full rack and they're like, chef, what do you mean 5 ribs? I'd be left hungry. Yeah, but in a party setting, you're going to have some people who eat, 10, other people who eat 3, and at the Super Bowl, you're snacking all day, right? So it's not just, hey, I'm going to go to a restaurant and order a slab of ribs with a baked potato, and I haven't eaten all day, I'm going to hammer this whole thing, right? You're grazing all day, you're eating chips and dip and that sort of stuff. So I think 4 to 5 ribs per adult is a safe bet. When my microwave oven dies, replace it with a combi. I've heard that restaurant owners hate food carts. True or no? Okay, so while I'm answering your first question, if you could clarify the food cart question. I'm not really sure what you're referring to there. But so when my microwave dies, replace with a combi. A combi oven is not a replacement for a microwave, but it is great at reheating food because you could do a steam and roast setting. So you could take like a leftover duck breast and pop it in your combi oven, reheat it with some steam, blast it with the top element to re-crisp the skin, and it'd be good to go. But like reheating like leftover Chinese food and reheating a lukewarm cup of coffee, microwave is almost always going to be better for that. But that's about it. I don't do a lot of microwave cooking, but I do like to reheat like pasta and Chinese food in there, and I use it for my coffee. But that's about it. Dave Jennings says last week is when we discussed the induction versus gas, so thank you for that, Dave. Greg says, got to take early lunch to at least catch the last portion of the show. Well, thanks, Gregory, for tuning in. I appreciate it. That was a pretty good show. I mean, look, we kind of went hard on Anova, right? I'm a little bit concerned that we're giving away too much free press to our friends at Anova Culinary, but this wasn't for them, right? They didn't send me a free oven. I paid for it. This was for you guys. I think Susan was the person who started this whole mess, right? She was listening to the live podcast. She said, "Hey, chef, now that combi ovens are so easily accessible to home cooks, what are your thoughts?" And I said, well, easily accessible. I mean, last time I checked, they're like $4,000 to $10,000 for the home, right? Depending on the model. And she said, no. Anova has one for sub 1,000. And I thought, oh, snap, pretty cool. So, this was for you guys. Again, I think it's worth a buy. I'm going to be playing with it a lot in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months. And so if you want to buy one, you can play along with me. Also, too, feel free to just mass bombard Anova Culinary with emails and say, hey, the reason why I'm buying this oven is because of this guy, Chef Jacob, who happens to run the best podcast on culinary arts in the world. You know what? Not even culinary arts, just the best podcast in the world. We can just stop it right there. And he sold me this oven. And by the way, you should really think about making it fit a half sheet tray and adding a vent fan to it, right? So that's it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It was a great time, as always. Have a great weekend and cook something delicious. I'll see you guys all next week.